Humanity's oldest question is, why is there something instead of nothing? Why are we here? I mean, yeah, what is the purpose? Every culture has been obsessed with some of these big questions. Philosophers have pontificated about it. There's theologians and priests that pray about it. Scientists experiment about it. The dyslexic, agnostic, insomniac lies awake all night wondering if there really is a dog. You know the old joke. But what I find interesting and why I'm making this video is because the Western menu is pretty limited. It tends to look at Abrahamic religions, at theism. So you can choose one of those Abrahamic gods. Atheism if you're not so hungry, or agnostic if you're not entirely sure. But there's a plot twist, because there's actually endless options. The Abrahamic religions came out of polytheism, and if you want me to make a video about that, please like and subscribe, because Jaeger's theory of everything is to test drive these worldviews, and I'd love to chat about it a bit further. I spent a lot of my life thinking about our operating system, what we believe, why we believe, epistemology. And so I'm going to answer basically three questions when I'm discussing worldviews, because these three questions apply to almost all worldviews, and it's important to understand the differences. So the first question is, what is real in this worldview? How do we know? Epistemology. What anchors morals? Because morals are a big part of what shapes us, our ethics. So let's start with polytheism, the oldest God tradition. Comes in a lot of different flavors, hard and soft, but mostly it's the idea of having many gods that rule over their own turf with their own strengths. Zeus, he's going to zap you with your thunderbolt. Poseidon, he's going to surf the seas. And then the Hindus have got thousands of gods and demons, like a pack of Pokemon cards. And so, we kind of dismiss these old Greek gods and polytheistic ideas, but they were there right in the beginning with Judaism. There's a lot of scriptures which I would love to make a video about, which talks about the assembly of gods. Even Elohim is the plural of gods, and we justify the use of that term for Trinity and for other things today. But reflect on just in the Genesis account, where the gods said, let us create man in our image. What was this all about? These are questions that we should be thinking about in terms of coming from the polytheistic tradition. And so theism is actually monotheism, this movement to recognizing that there are several gods out there. Even the Ten Commandments says, you may not worship other gods in front of me, I'm the only one. And then, you have this picture of El, the assembly of gods, where the Israelites are chosen for Yahweh. Not Yahweh chose the Israelites. And so it's extremely interesting if you recognize that polytheism was what shaped people's thinking before monotheism. Now we just call it theism, but it was this movement from many gods to one God. So theism is about a personal God, a conscious creator who built something, who cares for that something, who watches that something carefully, who intervenes where necessary in that something. And this is what we're most familiar with in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in the Western world, in traditional theism. So what's real? God is real, and his creation is real. How do we know this? Well, we know it through reason, but mostly through scripture, through revelation. And that's what these religions look to as the source. What anchors morals? Well, mostly divine command theory. God's character commands this. It's almost thought of as something objective and outside of oneself. And then there's deism. So the idea is God built a rational universe, and then he just said, peace out, bro. That's good. And he rested. No miracles, no prayers, no holy books. And what's real about deism? Well, God's real, and then the self-running creation that God's not interested anymore. How do we know? Well, we can reason when we look at nature and think, well, there may be something bigger than ourselves. What anchors morals? Well, it's natural laws, empathy, logic, those sort of things, not objective morality. Then there's pantheism, which essentially says the universe is God, not some person looking down, but God is part of the ocean, part of the stars, part of everything in the universe. He's part of nature, the one and the same, bro. And what's real is the divine universe is real. How do we know? Because we can see it. Observation, contemplation, experience. What anchors morals? It's cosmic harmony, understanding our place within the greater unity, within all that is. And then we can talk about pantheism. And this is kind of a middle ground. The universe is in God, but God's bigger than the universe. Not all is God, which is what pantheism is, but all in God. It's kind of like a mystic vibe here. I think of Sufism and Kabbalah. But what's real to pantheism is that both God contains everything and he transcends the world, transcends everything. How do we know? Well, intuition and nature's depths. How are morals grounded in this tradition or this worldview? By relational unity, by social contact. Most of this evolved through moral intuitions. And then those are kind of the more theistic traditions. And now you're starting to move into what one might call the agnostic or the atheistic traditions. And one is naturalism, which basically says, listen, nature's all you get. What you see there, the trees, the flowers, that's all that's needed. Natural laws, gravity, all those things we know, explain it all. What we don't know, we'll find out. There is room for things like consciousness, which is sort of an emergent perk. It's not something that's magical. We don't need the supernatural. We don't need magic. What caused nature? What was the very first thing? Well, that doesn't matter. Who really cares if grass came about from spores and then mushrooms and so on? We can go that far back, but where did the spore come from? Or eventually we're going to reach a place where we don't have the answers, and that's not important. What's real is only the natural world. How do we know? Well, we can see this through evidence. We know this through science. And then how do naturalists get morals? Well, probably through empathy, through evolutionary progress, where we have these built-in mechanisms over the years, over the millions and hundreds of thousands and millions of years, and we create social contracts. So before I move on to the next one, hit subscribe because I really want to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I will reward all of my early subscribers who supported me with 25% of all books, all events, anything that I ever sell, all merchandise, indefinitely. I need to get to these 1,000 subscribers. Comment if you'd like me to discuss early polytheism, especially in the Abrahamic religions, or anything else that you've liked, and please share this video with anyone whose brain's also a little bent like mine. So the next up I want to talk about materialism, because it's often confused with naturalism, and we're living in a material world and I'm a material boy, and materialism basically says only matter matters. Only matter. There's no supernatural or anything that's non-physical. Only what's real is matter, energy, the physical. What we know about this is what science tells us about squishy, touchy things, physical things. Morals, well, these evolved in the tribe through group hugs, through eye contact, but there was no need for any cosmic referee. It was there. So that's materialism. Then rationalism. Rationalism is where the reason essentially rules the rooster. I think, therefore I am. So what is real is whatever's logical. Evidence locks us in whatever's real. How do we know? Well, because it's rational, duh. And how do we get morals? Well, through rational thinking, through ethics. There's no need for any divine memo in rationality. Now, there's plenty of other worldviews and systems as well. And many people just think, well, if somebody is an atheist, atheism just means there's no belief in a God. But there's lots of other kind of worldviews and belief systems that are on the outskirts of this. Satanism is basically a worldview in my mind for rebels. It's the theistic idea flipped around, although some would argue that atheists don't really believe in God. Their morals come from a rebel code where you rule what your ethics should be. And there's a whole host of other forms of atheism. Secular humanism, it basically says, look, no God, no problem. Humans can look after each other. We can discover our own personal meaning. And then there's things like agnosticism, which is kind of a question dodge because it's saying that you first need to define God. And then nihilism, it's kind of a form of existentialism. Nothing really matters. And I'm going through this very quickly. These aren't really proper definitions. It's just me ranting on. But at any rate, the reason I'm wanting to discuss all these different worldviews is because I want to talk about presuppositions next. And it's very difficult to explain presuppositions without appreciating that we all have a view about God. We all have a view about why we know what we know about God. We all have a view about what is real, and we all have a view about morals. And it's all tied into our worldview. And if we appreciate that our worldview has given us those things, and other people have different worldviews that have given them the same things, then you'll be able to understand why we presuppose certain things. So smash like, subscribe, and I promise you the first 1,000 people indefinitely will get 25% all my books, all my events for life. Thank you very much for watching, and please watch the video on presupposition in which this one is set up.